Ever get that nagging feeling, you know? That little voice saying something just isn't quite right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's sort of where our deep dive starts today. We're looking at this retired detective, Jay Magruder. He just can't shake this unease about a murder-suicide case, seemingly closed 5 years back.
Okay. Seems straightforward enough at first glance.
Right. But here's where it gets, well, properly intriguing. Magruder puts out this ad on social media,
Uh-huh.
and this young guy, like barely out of school, contacts him, claims he knows every single detail
Every TV,
of
huh?
this case that's, get this, over 25 years old.
Wow. Okay, that is weird. How would he even know?
Exactly. It's like a puzzle inside another puzzle. So that's what we're going to try and piece together today by digging into the book at the heart of it all, Precision, the original Magruder mystery by D.C. Scott.
Okay, precision. Got it.
Yeah, and we've got a bunch of stuff to go on the publisher's description, reader reviews, the usual sources. Our goal is really just to understand what makes this mystery tick.
Well, what immediately grabs me is that basic question. Why does this closed case still bother a seasoned detective after 5 years?
Right.
It suggests, maybe a flaw in the original investigation or some small detail that got pushed aside. Detectives, they often rely on that gut feeling, don't they?
Instinct.
Yeah, instinct honed over years. So Magruder's unease, that's a huge flag right away. Tells you there's probably more to the story.
Absolutely. And it's not just any old cold case file gathering dust. This one was officially marked case unsolved, investigation discontinued.
Ooh, that wording.
Yeah. Talk about a phrase that just screams for someone to take another look. It basically says, we hit a wall, but we're not totally convinced.
Right, it implies doubt right there in the official record.
And then this young man shows up knowing things, intimate things, about events way before he was even born.
It's incredibly strange.
So for Magruder, it's suddenly two things, isn't it? It's solving the original crime, sure, but it's also figuring out who is this kid and how does he know all this?
And that layering of mysteries, it's a classic technique, isn't it? And really effective.
How so?
By giving us two puzzles, the original crime and the young man's connection, the author basically doubles our investment right from the start.
Okay.
We're not just passively following Magruder's investigation, we're actively trying to solve this other enigma, too.
Now, something else that really stands out, at least from the descriptions, is the genre blend. It's not just a straight murder mystery.
Oh, what else is in there?
It's described as having a significant romance element, too. That feels like, well, an interesting mix for this kind of story.
It is. Yeah, mixing genres like that, it can really broaden a book's appeal, pull in readers who like mystery and readers who like romance.
But it has to be done well, right?
Absolutely. The key is how they intertwine. Does the romance, raise the stakes for the mystery? Maybe
Yeah.
involves a suspect or someone close to the detective?
Or maybe it just adds emotional depth.
Exactly. Or gives a deeper layer to the characters caught up in it all. The reviews seem to suggest this blend is a pretty central feature, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Scott balances those.
And wait, there's a third element mentioned. Sports.
Sports.
Okay.
That's less common in this mix.
Yeah, apparently there's plenty about sports woven into this story. Feels like a very specific ingredient. Any thoughts on how that might work?
Huh. Well, that is fascinating. One of the reviews from onlinebookclub.org, I think, specifically mentions it. They suggested the heavy focus on American football might be great for some readers.
But maybe not for others.
Potentially, yeah. If you're not familiar with it, maybe it pulls you out of the story a bit. But on the other hand, that level of detail could add a really unique texture.
Like grounding it.
Yeah, grounding it in a specific place or community.
Hmm.
Or maybe the sports details are actually clues, meaningful if you understand that world. It makes you wonder if the sports stuff is, crucial to the plot or more just background flavor.
Interesting. Okay, let's think about how the author actually tells the story, the structure. The book description makes a point of saying, be sure to read the epilogue where the narrator's identity is revealed.
Wow, okay. Holding it back right till the end.
Yeah. That seems like a pretty bold move, holding back something that fundamental who's telling the story until the very last pages.
It is bold.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a deliberate strategy, right? To control our perspective the whole way through.
How do you mean?
Well, if you don't know who's narrating, you're maybe more likely to question everything you're told, every observation, every bit of info.
Okay, keeps you guessing.
Exactly. And then that final reveal, when you find out who it was all along, it can force you to completely reevaluate everything you thought you knew. Creates that big aha moment.
And presumably that connects back to the mystery of the young man somehow, his knowledge.
You'd have to assume so, yeah.
Yeah.
The epilogue probably holds the key to that connection. That makes sense.
And it sounds like D.C. Scott, the author, he kind of wants us playing along. The description sort of challenges you to guess not just the killer,
Uh-huh.
but also the identity of the second victim and the narrator. Like he's throwing down the gauntlet.
Exactly. Yeah, by putting those questions out there right away, he turns reading into like an active investigation.
So you become the detective.
Pretty much. You're constantly hunting for clues, trying to connect the dots, and those reader reviews, the ones calling it a page-turner and unputdownable,
Yeah.
that suggests this approach really works. It keeps people hooked, wanting to solve those puzzles he set up.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly and talk about the author himself, D.C. Scott. His background seems, well, quite different.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he apparently spent over 20 years in agriculture before making a big shift into nursing.
Wow, agriculture to nursing, that's quite a jump.
It is, and it makes you wonder, doesn't it, how those really different experiences might feed into his writing.
Definitely. The agriculture background, maybe that brings a unique feel for, like, setting or a certain type of rural community.
Could be.
And then nursing, dealing with people when they're vulnerable, seeing all sorts of situations, that could give him real insight into human nature motivation, which is obviously gold for writing mystery.
Good point. We also know he's into things like swimming and cycling, walks his dog, and he has a blog, Callie's Corner, on the Magruder Mysteries website.
Ah, okay, so he's engaging directly with readers.
Seems like it.
That's smart. Building a community around the books, maybe sharing insights into his process, hinting at what's next. That blog could even offer like extra context for people who've read Precision.
And it looks like the book, under the title Precision, A Crime of Passion, which we think is the same book, got nominated for a Reader's Choice Award at some point.
Okay.
Now, the voting's long past, but still, getting nominated suggests it hit a positive note with readers, right?
Oh, absolutely. That kind of recognition, even just a nomination, it's valuable validation, especially if you're maybe newer to the genre. Shows the book made an impression.
So looking at the actual reader feedback, the ratings on Goodreads and Amazon seem generally pretty strong.
Yeah. What are they like?
Well, Goodreads is showing about 4.58 stars, though only from 12 ratings, so small sample size. Amazon's got 4.3 out of 5 stars.
Okay, so generally positive, keeping the sample size in mind. That tracks with the comments you mentioned earlier.
Right, things like well-written, mind-boggling plot, good blend of romance and suspense. Someone called it an incredible thriller.
Sounds like it delivers on that page-turner promise for many readers then.
It does seem that way, but, we always want a balanced picture, and that onlinebookclub.org review, while they gave it 4 out of 5 stars.
They had some criticisms too.
They did raise some interesting points. They liked the plot, thought it was engaging, liked the romance integration, but they felt the mystery part maybe got a bit lost sometimes, especially in the middle. Like the pacing of the suspense wasn't quite consistent throughout.
Okay, that's a fair point to raise about pacing in blended genres. It can be tough to keep all the threads taut.
They also mentioned the American football thing again, that the heavy detail might not land well with everyone.
Right, the potential alienation factor if you're not into sports. That's a risk with any niche element, really.
Yeah. And the reviewer also felt some character reactions, particularly someone named John, seemed a little emotionally flat sometime.
Okay, character depth and reaction.
And maybe the biggest critique, for a mystery at least, was that the killer. Well, the killer was apparently an entirely new character, introduced quite late.
Yeah, that can be a bit unsatisfying sometimes in mysteries, can't it?
Why is that?
Well, often the most, satisfying reveals involve someone we've suspected or at least encountered along the way. Lets you look back and see the clues. Bringing in someone totally new at the end can feel a bit like it came out of nowhere. Less earned, maybe.
Makes sense.
But as you said, even with those points, the reviewer still called it a good read. And they thought it would definitely hit the mark for its target audience, people who like romance, mystery, and suspense.
So worth knowing those potential bumps, but still generally positive.
Seems that way.
Okay, finally, just the nuts and bolts. Precision, the original Magruder mystery, published September 2021. It's around 338 pages.
Standard sort of length.
Yep. Available in Kindle and paperback. And the Kindle version has those features like page flip, word-wise, things that can make digital reading a bit easier.
Useful extras.
So wrapping up our deep dive on precision, it sounds like we've got a book trying a really interesting mix: mystery, romance, even a big dose of sports.
Yeah, all built around this really compelling cold case and this totally enigmatic young man with all the answers.
And it seems generally well liked for being engaging, having twists.
Though potential readers should probably just be aware of that genre blend, maybe especially the football aspect, and definitely be ready for that narrator reveal being held right until the epilogue.
Which actually brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. Why do you think D.C. Scott made that specific choice, holding back the narrator's identity until the very end?
Yeah, what effect does that have? As you're reading, how does not knowing who's telling the story change things?
Would knowing earlier who was guiding you through it all, would that have fundamentally changed how you experienced Magruder's whole investigation? Something to chew on if you decide to take your own dive into precision.